The sound came first. A deep, smooth engine hum rolled through the dusty street like thunder wrapped in silk. People turned their heads. Market women paused mid-argument. A bus conductor froze with one foot on the step. Even the flies buzzing around trays of fried akara seemed to hesitate. Three black Rolls-Royce cars glided into the narrow roadside space and stopped directly in front of a small, worn food stall with a rusted zinc roof. The stall belonged to Mama Eunice. Mama Eunice stood behind her wooden table, her hands shaking as she held a ladle dripping with hot stew. Her wrapper was faded from years of washing, her blouse loose at the shoulders. She blinked hard, convinced her eyes were lying to her. Rolls-Royce here. People whispered, some laughed in disbelief. Others stepped closer, phones already raised. The first car door opened. Then the second. Then the third. Three young people stepped out. Two tall young men in well-tailored suits, calm and confident. Between them, a young woman in a simple but elegant dress, her hair neatly styled, her posture straight like royalty pretending to be ordinary. Mama Eunice dropped the ladle. It hit the ground with a dull clank. Her knees weakened. The faces staring back at her were older, stronger, refined, but they were faces she knew. Faces she had once washed with warm water from a bucket. Faces she had fed with her last cup of rice. Faces she had prayed over when the rain soaked their thin clothes at night. Tun de Malola Said, she whispered. The young woman took a step forward, her eyes filled with tears. Mama. That single word shattered the silence. Mama Eunice screamed. She staggered forward, forgetting the crowd, the cars, the noise. Her hands reached out, touching their faces again and again as if afraid they would vanish. You came back, she cried. You really came back. The crowd gasped. Someone shouted, Nud dem on the cars. Another voice said, Jesus. Mama Eunice laughed and cried at the same time, her chest rising and falling sharply. But before she could ask a single question, before she could even fully understand what was happening, the tallest of the young men gently held her shoulders. Mama, he said softly, we need to talk. His tone was loving but serious. Mama Eunice looked from one face to another, her joy slowly mixing with confusion and fear. Talk about what? The past. The street. The secret. The world seemed to tilt. And just like that, her mind was pulled back to the day everything began. 19 years earlier. The rain had been merciless that night. Mama Eunice had been packing her pots after a long day of selling food near the bus stop. Business had been bad, her feet ached, her back screamed. All she wanted was to go home, say a short prayer and sleep. Then she heard crying. Not one voice. Three. Weak, shaking, desperate. She followed the sound to the abandoned shop across the road. Inside, huddled together like frightened kittens, were three children, two boys and a girl. They were thin, dirty, shivering, their clothes were torn, their eyes wide with fear. They couldn't have been more than 5 years old. Mama Eunice asked questions. Where were their parents? Where was their home? How did they get there? The children only cried harder. The girl clutched the boys, refusing to let go. The boys stood in front of her, small chests puffed in useless bravery. Mama Eunice's heart broke. She had no husband, no children, no savings, just her food stall and her faith. She knew in that moment that taking them in would change her life forever. Still, she carried them home. From that night on, Mama Eunice became everything to them. She fed them before herself. She worked longer hours to buy books and uniforms. When neighbors mocked her for raising children of nobody, she ignored them. When sickness came, she prayed. When school fees were due, she borrowed and repaid slowly. The children grew. Tun, the first boy, was quiet and observant. Dame Alola, the second, was bold and protective. Said was sharp, kind, and determined. They helped at the stall after school. They fetched water. They never complained. Years passed. Against all odds, Mama Eunice sent all three to college. On the day they graduated, they knelt before her, tears in their eyes. Mama, they said, we are going to look for greener pastures. We promise we will come back for you. She smiled, proud but afraid. Months turned into years. Letters stopped. Calls stopped. People whispered again. They've forgotten her. They used her and moved on. Mama Eunice said nothing. She kept cooking. She kept praying. She kept waiting. And now, 3 Rolls-Royce cars stood in front of her stall. The children she raised were standing before her as adults she barely recognized. Joy battled fear in her chest. What had they become? Why did they really come back? And why did that serious look remain on Tun's face as he said again, quietly, "Mama, we need to talk." The crowd leaned closer. Mama Eunice swallowed. Her heart pounded. Because deep inside she suddenly felt something was coming, something that would change her life forever. And she wasn't sure she was ready to hear it. Mama Eunice sat on the wooden bench inside her small room, her hands folded tightly in her lap. The walls were thin, the ceiling low, and the familiar smell of dried pepper and palm oil hung in the air. This room had seen her cry many nights. It had heard her prayers, her doubts, her whispered conversations with God. Now it held 3 strangers who were not strangers at all. Tun stood near the door, his back straight, his eyes calm but heavy. Dame Alola paced slowly, unable to sit still, his polished shoes looking out of place on the cracked floor. Said sat closest to Mama Eunice, holding her hand the same way she had done as a child whenever thunder struck. Outside, the crowd refused to leave. People argued about who the young adults were. Some claimed they were politicians' children, others swore they were foreign billionaires. The Rolls-Royce cars remained parked like silent guards. Mama Eunice finally found her voice. "My children," she said softly, "what is going on?" Tund exhaled slowly. "Mama, what we are about to tell you is not easy." Her heart skipped. "Are you in trouble?" she asked quickly. "Did something bad happen? If you need money." Dame Alola stopped packing. "Mama, no, please." Said squeezed Mama Eunice's hand tighter. "Mama, nothing bad has happened, but something big has." Mama Eunice searched their faces. They were not joking, they were not proud, they were careful, like people handling fragile glass. "Then tell me," she whispered. Tund nodded. "But first, Mama, we need to ask you something." Mama Eunice stiffened. "Ask." "Do you remember the night you found us?" he asked. "How can I forget?" she replied. "It was raining, you were crying like your hearts were breaking." "Do you remember anything else?" he pressed gently. "Anything strange?" Mama Eunice frowned, digging into her memory. "Only that you were too clean to be street children," and the girl said she was holding a small gold chain. Said's breath caught. Dame Alola froze. Tun closed his eyes for a moment. Mama Eunice noticed the change immediately. "Why?" Tund opened his eyes again. "Mama, we did not tell you everything when we left." Her chest tightened. "When we said we were going to look for greener pastures," Dame Alola added, "we were not only looking for work. We were looking for the truth," Said said softly. Mama Eunice's hands began to tremble. "What truth?" Tund took a step forward and knelt in front of her, just as he had done years ago on graduation day. "Mama," he said, his voice low, "we were not abandoned by accident." The words landed like stones. Mama Eunice shook her head. "No, don't say that." "We were hidden," Dame Alola continued, "protected, taken away." "From who?" Mama Eunice asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Said swallowed. "From a family that was powerful, dangerous, and very rich." Silence filled the room. Mama Eunice laughed nervously. "You think you are in one of those films?" Tund reached into his jacket slowly. Mama Eunice flinched, fear flashing across her face. He pulled out a folded document. "This," he said, placing it gently on her lap, "is a birth record." Mama Eunice stared at it without opening it. Said added, "We each have one, same date, same parents' names." Mama Eunice's mouth went dry. "After college," Tund continued, "we were contacted by a lawyer. He had been looking for us for years. He recognized the gold chain Said still had." Said reached into her bag and brought out the chain, clean, shining, unmistakably expensive. "The chain belonged to our mother," she said, "a woman who disappeared shortly after we were born." Mama Eunice felt dizzy. "We followed the trail," Dame Alola said. "It took us abroad, it took us into places we never imagined. And what we discovered," Tund said, his voice hardening, "changed everything." Mama Eunice clutched her chest. "Are you saying?" "Yes," Said whispered. "Mama, we come from a family that owns more than money." Mama Eunice shook her head again and again. "Then why did nobody come for you?" Tund's jaw tightened. "Because someone wanted us gone." The room felt colder. There was a struggle for power, Damalola said, and 3 bobbies were a problem. Mama Eunice covered her mouth with her hand. They tried to erase us, Said said, tears rolling down her cheeks. If not for you, Mama, we would have died. Mama Eunice broke down. She cried the kind of cry that comes from deep inside the soul. Said moved closer, wrapping her arms around her. The boys knelt too, holding her like children again. Minutes passed before Mama Eunice could speak. And the cars, she asked weakly. Tun stood up slowly. Mama, those cars are nothing. Damalola added, they belong to us. Mama Eunice looked up sharply. What? We did not just find our family, Tun said, we reclaimed our place. Mama Eunice stared at him, her heart racing. Then why come back here? All 3 of them looked at her. Said answered first, because you are our mother. Tun nodded, before we go anywhere else. Damalola finished, we came to take you home. Mama Eunice gasped, home. Tun looked toward the door, where the noise of the crowd still echoed. Mama, he said quietly, there is something else. Her heart sank again. The people who tried to destroy us, he continued, they now know we are alive. Mama Eunice's blood ran cold. And they are watching. The words hung in the air like a warning. Outside, one of the Rolls-Royce engines started. Mama Eunice felt fear crawl up her spine. Because in that moment, she realized this reunion was not just about joy. It was the beginning of something much bigger and much more dangerous. Mama Eunice did not sleep that night. Even after the crowd finally dispersed, after the engines of the 3 Rolls-Royce cars went silent, and after the triplets, security men quietly took positions outside the compound, her eyes refused to close. She lay on her thin mattress, staring at the ceiling, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of soft footsteps and low voices outside her door. For years her life had been simple, hard yes, but simple. Now danger had entered it wearing polished shoes. At dawn, Mama Eunice rose and did what she had always done. She swept the yard, she washed her face, she tied her wrapper, but when she stepped outside with her broom, she froze. 2 tall men in dark suits bowed slightly. Good morning, Mamas. She nearly dropped the broom. Said rushed forward, Mama, please don't be afraid. Mama Eunice laughed weakly, you people will kill me with shock. The triplets insisted she eat breakfast inside, away from the stall. The food tasted rich, foreign, carefully prepared. Mama Eunice chewed slowly, feeling like a visitor in her own life. After breakfast, Tund asked gently, Mama, can you tell us everything you remember from that night, even small things? She nodded. She told them about the rain, the clean clothes, the strange mark she once noticed behind Damalola's ear, the gold chain, and one more thing she had never mentioned before. There was a car, she said, not like these ones but black. It passed slowly and stopped far away. I thought it was nothing. The room went quiet. That car followed us, Damalola said under his breath. Said's eyes filled with fear, so they were close. Tund clenched his fists, closer than we thought. Mama Eunice felt guilt rise in her chest. If I had known. Tund interrupted gently, Mama, you saved us, that is all that matters. Later that day, the triplets told her they were leaving the country again, but this time she was going with them. Mama Eunice panicked. My stall, she protested, my customers. Said held her hands, Mama, this place is no longer safe. Mama Eunice looked around her small room, her cooking pots, her cracked walls, tears filled her eyes. This place had been her whole world. That evening, as they prepared to leave, a man appeared across the street. He pretended to buy roasted corn, but his eyes never left the compound. Tund noticed. The man noticed that Tund noticed. And then he disappeared. Inside the car, Mama Eunice whispered, You see. Tund nodded, Yes, Mama, we see. As the convoy moved, Mama Eunice felt her heart pound. The city lights blurred past, fear sat beside her like an unwanted passenger. Hours later, they reached a private airstrip. Mama Eunice had never seen a plane up close. She grabbed Said's arm, Where are you taking me? Somewhere safe, Said replied. As the plane lifted into the sky, Mama Eunice closed her eyes and prayed. She did not know she was flying toward a life she never imagined. She also did not know that back in the city, a phone rang. Yes, a cold voice answered. They have taken her, the caller said, the old woman. There was a pause. Good, the voice replied, she is the key. The call ended. High above the clouds, Mama Eunice slept for the first time in days, unaware that her kindness had made her part of a dangerous game. If this story is touching you already, take a moment to like the video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss what happens next. Also, comment below and tell us where you're watching from. The plane landed just before sunrise. Mama Eunice woke to a gentle touch on her shoulder. Said smiled at her, calm and reassuring, but Mama Eunice could see the tension behind her eyes. Outside the window, the world looked different, quiet, clean, guarded. They drove for a long time after landing. The roads were smooth, lined with tall trees and security posts. Finally, the car turned through wide iron gates that opened slowly, revealing a massive estate. The house stood proudly at the center, white walls glowing in the early morning light, surrounded by trimmed lawns and fountains that whispered as water flowed. Mama Eunice's mouth fell open. Jesus, she breathed, who lives here? Tund answered gently, we do, Mama, for now. She stepped out of the car slowly, her legs weak. Everything felt unreal. The air smelled different, even the silence felt expensive. Inside the house, staff members lined up respectfully. Some bowed, some smiled, all called her Mama without question. Mama Eunice felt tears sting her eyes. They led her to a warm room with soft curtains and a bed so large it scared her. This room is yours, Said said. Mama Eunice shook her head quickly. No, 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 this is too much. Dame Alola knelt in front of her. Mama, you slept on the floor so we could sleep on a mattress, please. She sat down slowly, overwhelmed. Later that day, they gathered in a quiet sitting room. Tund asked the staff to leave them alone. There is something else we must tell you, he said. Mama Eunice's chest tightened again. She was beginning to fear those words. Our real surname, Tund continued, is Holloway. Mama Eunice blinked. Holloway. Yes, Said said, the Holloway Group. Mama Eunice had heard the name on the radio before. A powerful family, oil, real estate, politics. You are those Holloways, she whispered. Dame Alola nodded, the rightful ones. They explained everything slowly, how their mother had married into the Holloway family, how she had been kind but surrounded by greedy relatives, how the triplets' birth had threatened someone's plan to control the family wealth. They tried to erase us, Tund said. Our mother fought back. Mama Eunice's heart ached. What happened to her? Said looked down. She disappeared. We still don't know if she is alive. Silence settled heavily. After college, Tund continued, the lawyer found us. The trust left in our names was untouched. The moment we proved who we were, everything changed. Mama Eunice thought of her food stall, her broken plates, her long nights of hunger. All this, she said slowly, came because you suffered. Dame Alola shook his head. All this came because you loved us. That night, Mama Eunice dreamed of rain and crying children again. She woke with tears on her face. Days passed. Slowly, she began to relax. She learned how to use the bathroom. She laughed when Said taught her how to use a soft towel instead of air drying in the sun. She sat by the window watching birds she had never seen before. For the first time in years, her body rested. But danger did not rest. One afternoon, a security officer approached Tund quietly. There's been movement, he said. Someone is asking questions in the city. Tund's face hardened. Mama Eunice noticed immediately. What is it? Nothing, Tund lied gently. But that night, Mama Eunice overheard voices. They know she's alive. We underestimated the old woman. She must be protected at all cost. Mama Eunice's heart pounded. The next morning, she confronted them. You are hiding things from me, she said. Said tried to smile. Mama. I am not a child, Mama Eunice interrupted. If danger is coming because of me, I must know. Tund sighed. Mama, the same people who tried to kill us as Bobbies are afraid. Afraid of what? Of you, Dame Alola said. Mama Eunice laughed nervously. Me, I only cook food. You raised us, Tund replied, and you know the truth. That afternoon a package arrived. No return address. Security examined it carefully before bringing it inside. Inside was a single photograph. 3 Bobbies. In a hospital. And a woman standing beside them, smiling weakly. Mama Eunice gasped. That's her, she whispered. That is their mother. Behind the photograph, 4 words were written in red ink. She should have died. Said screamed. Damalola slammed his fist into the wall. Tun closed his eyes, breathing slowly. Mama Eunice felt cold fear spread through her bones. They know, she whispered. Tun picked up the photograph carefully. Yes, he said, and now the game has begun. Outside, far beyond the gates, a black car idled quietly. Watching. Waiting. And for the first time since the rain-soaked night 19 years ago, Mama Eunice realized that her kindness had not only saved lives. It had challenged powerful enemies who were not done yet. Security was doubled that night. Lights stayed on around the estate, guards rotated in silence, cameras blinked softly, watching every corner. Mama Eunice sat on the edge of her bed, the photograph resting on her lap like a weight she could not lift. She kept staring at the woman's face. The eyes were gentle, tired, loving. She looks like you, Mama Eunice whispered to Said earlier. Said had nodded slowly, as if afraid to agree too loudly. Now alone, Mama Eunice prayed. She prayed the way she always had, without fancy words. She prayed for protection, she prayed for peace, she prayed that the children she raised would not suffer again because of her. Before dawn there was movement. A quiet alarm chimed somewhere in the house. Tund was awake instantly. He moved with calm urgency, speaking into his phone in low tones. Damalola checked the security feed, his jaw tight. Said stood near Mama Eunice's door, refusing to leave her side. What is happening? Mama Eunice asked. Someone tested the perimeter, Tund said, just testing. Mama Eunice knew better. That morning, the triplets told her they would be moving again, temporarily. Why? She asked, fear rising. Because they are not looking for us, Damalola said, they are looking for proof. Proof of what? Mama Eunice asked. Tund answered, proof that we survived, proof that we belong, proof that our mother's bloodline was not erased. Mama Eunice thought of the photograph, of the red ink, of the words. They want to silence the last witnesses, she said slowly. Yes, Said replied, and you are one of them. The words frightened Mama Eunice more than any threat ever had. They traveled again, this time to a quiet coastal town where the air smelled of salt and the waves never stopped moving. The house was smaller, simpler, it felt safer, but Mama Eunice knew safety was now a fragile thing. Days passed quietly. Too quietly. Mama Eunice cooked again, this time in a modern kitchen that still felt strange to her hands. She insisted on feeding the staff herself, just like old times. The triplets watched her with soft smiles, but worry never left their eyes. One afternoon, while sorting old documents with Tund, Mama Eunice paused. This name, she said, pointing, I've seen it before. Tund leaned closer. Where? In the city, she said slowly. Years ago, a man used to come around. He never ate, he only watched. Tund stiffened. Do you remember his face? Yes, Mama Eunice said. Sharp nose, limped slightly, always wore black. Tund stood abruptly. That's impossible. Why? Because that man, Tund said, voice low, was my uncle's right-hand man. Mama Eunice's heart dropped. He knew where we were, she whispered. Yes, Tund replied, and he let us live. Why? Tund looked out the window, his reflection staring back at him, because someone else stopped him. Who? Mama Eunice asked. Before he could answer, Said rushed in holding a phone. We found something, she said, breathless. On the screen was a recent news article. HOLLOWAY family announces return of lost HEIRS, matriarch SBEAKS. Mama Eunice stared, matriarch. Damalola entered the room. Someone is lying. The article showed a woman seated in an expensive chair, her face partially hidden. She claims she raised us, Damalola said bitterly. She says she saved us. Mama Eunice's hands shook. That is a lie, she said firmly, a big lie. Tund nodded, and lies like this are dangerous. Because if the world believed her, Mama Eunice would become invisible again. Or worse, disposable. That night, Mama Eunice couldn't sleep. She walked to the balcony, listening to the waves. A memory surfaced suddenly, sharp and clear. The night I found you, she murmured to herself, I heard a woman scream. Her breath caught. She had buried that memory, thinking it was thunder. The next morning she told them. Said covered her mouth. Damalola cursed under his breath. Tun went silent for a long time. Then he said, "Our mother fought that night." Mama Eunice's eyes filled with tears. "She didn't abandon you." "No," Tun said, "she tried to save us." A message arrived later that day. No sender. Just words. "The old woman remembers too much." Mama Eunice read it once. Then again. Her chest tightened. "They are coming," she whispered. Tun looked at her, his face calm but fierce. "No," he said, "they already made a mistake." Mama Eunice swallowed. "What mistake?" "They underestimated what you taught us," Dame Alola replied. Said held Mama Eunice's hands. "You taught us courage." Tun nodded. "And now, Mama, it's time to stop running." Outside, the ocean roared louder than before. Somewhere a plan was forming. And for the first time, the people who thought they had erased 3 lives were about to learn that kindness, once planted, grows into something unstoppable. The meeting room was quiet, heavy with purpose. Tun stood at the head of the long table, documents spread neatly in front of him. Dame Alola leaned against the wall, arms crossed, eyes sharp. Said sat beside Mama Eunice, her hand resting protectively on the old woman's shoulder. Outside, the ocean crashed steadily, as if counting time. "We have 2 choices," Tun said calmly. "Hide and let them control the story, or step forward and tell the truth." Mama Eunice swallowed. "The truth will make enemies." Dame Alola nodded. "We already have enemies, Mama." Said spoke softly, "But the truth will also bring allies." Tun slid a file across the table. "These are hospital records, birth logs, security footage from years ago, and a statement from the lawyer who protected the trust." Mama Eunice looked at the papers with awe. "You kept all this?" "We were taught not to throw away anything important," Tun replied gently. "You taught us that." A knock sounded at the door. Security entered with a tablet. "We traced the article. It was planted through a media firm owned by our uncle's company." Dame Alola scoffed. "Of course." "And the woman claiming to be our guardian?" Said asked. "She's being protected," the guard said, "but her story doesn't add up." Tun's eyes hardened. "It won't." The plan was simple and dangerous. They would return publicly. They would bring Mama Eunice with them. And they would tell the story from the beginning. Mama Eunice felt fear rise in her chest. "People will look at me, point at me, ask questions." Said squeezed her hand. "Mama, you faced worse selling food on the street." Dame Alola smiled faintly. "And you never ran." The press conference was set for the following day. By morning, the city buzzed with rumors. Cars lined the streets near the Holloway headquarters. Cameras flashed, voices overlapped in excited confusion. Mama Eunice stood backstage, dressed simply in a clean wrapper and blouse Said had chosen. Her hair was neatly covered. She looked like herself, and that gave her strength. "You ready?" Tund asked. She nodded, though her heart pounded. They stepped out together. The noise was overwhelming. Cameras, microphones, shouts. Tund raised his hand. Silence slowly followed. "We are the Holloway triplets," he began, "and today we are telling the truth." He spoke clearly about the attempted erasure, the hidden trust, the lies, the years of searching. Then he turned. "This is Mama Eunice," he said, "the woman who found us in the rain, who fed us when she had nothing, who raised us without asking for a name or reward." Cameras swung toward her. Mama Eunice's legs trembled. Said leaned in. "Mama." Mama Eunice stepped forward. Her voice shook at first, but then it steadied. "I did not know who they were," she said. "I only knew they were children." She spoke of the rain, the hunger, the years of struggle, the graduation day promise, the long silence, the shock of the cars. "I did not raise them to be rich," she said. "I raised them to be good." The room was silent. Then questions exploded. "Did you know about their family?" "No." "Did you receive money?" "No." "Why did you keep them?" Mama Eunice looked straight ahead. "Because if I left them, they would have died." The truth landed hard. By evening, the story had spread everywhere. The article was challenged, the woman's claim unraveled, evidence surfaced, witnesses spoke, the lawyer released his statement. Pressure mounted. That night a call came in. The woman from the article crying. "They will abandon you," she warned. "Power eats everyone." Tund listened calmly. "We learned loyalty from a food vendor," he replied, and ended the call. Days later, the Holloway board met. The rightful heirs were recognized. Assets were restored. And in the quiet aftermath, Tund called a family meeting. Mama, he said kneeling, we want to make this official. Said smiled through tears, Damalola nodded. Mama Eunice's breath caught. We want to adopt you, Tund continued. Not because of the cameras, not because of the story, but because you are our mother. Mama Eunice broke down. She held their faces one by one. I already was, she whispered. Outside, the world reacted with shock, admiration, and debate. Inside, a family was finally whole. The noise slowly faded. After the interviews, the headlines, the arguments on television, and the endless debates online, something unexpected happened. Life became quiet again. For Mama Eunice, the quiet felt strange. She now lived in a house with long hallways and soft carpets that swallowed the sound of her footsteps. In the mornings, sunlight poured through wide windows instead of leaking through zinc roofing. There was always food, always water, always someone asking if she was comfortable. Yet some habits refused to leave her. She still woke before dawn. She still checked the kitchen first. She still measured ingredients by instinct, not by tools. One morning, Said found her outside, sitting near the garden, peeling vegetables into a small bowl. Mama, Said laughed gently, the chef already prepared breakfast. Mama Eunice smiled without looking up. Let him rest, I like doing this. Said sat beside her, you don't have to struggle anymore. Mama Eunice nodded, I know, but work keeps the heart steady. That was something she had learned long ago. The adoption process moved quietly without cameras, the triplets insisted on that, lawyers handled papers, judges reviewed documents, names were signed. Mama Eunice became Mama Eunice Holloway. Not because she asked, but because they insisted. The day it was finalized, the triplets surprised her with a small ceremony in the garden. No reporters, no speeches, just family, close friends, and a simple meal. Tund stood before her, holding her hands. You taught us what family means, he said. This is only a name, the bond was already there. Mama Eunice could not speak, she only nodded, tears streaming down her face. Damalola hugged her tightly, now you can't escape us. She laughed through her tears, I never wanted to. Slowly, Mama Eunice's life transformed, but not in the way people expected. She refused expensive clothes that made her uncomfortable. She rejected jewelry that felt heavy on her skin. Instead, she asked for something else. I want to open a place, she said one evening. Tund looked up from his tablet, a restaurant. No, Mama Eunice replied, a food center for people who have nothing, students, orphans, strangers. Said smiled immediately, like your stall. Yes, Mama Eunice said, but bigger, cleaner, safer. Damalola leaned forward, Mama, we can build 10. She shook her head, one is enough. They opened it quietly in the same city where her old stall once stood. The building was simple, the sign read. Mama Eunice Community Kitchen. No prices were listed. Those who could pay, paid. Those who could not, ate anyway. Mama Eunice cooked there often, standing behind the counter just like before. People came not just for food but for comfort. Students, widows, street children, even business people who remembered her from the past. She listened to their stories. She prayed with them. She fed them. The triplets watched from a distance, proud and protective. But danger had not fully disappeared. One evening, Tund received a message from an unknown number. You won the public battle, not the private one. He stared at the screen for a long time. That night he told Mama Eunice everything. She listened quietly. Then she said something that surprised him. They are tired. Tund frowned, who? Your enemies, she replied. People who live by fear grow tired when fear stops working. Damalola shook his head, they are not tired, they are waiting. Mama Eunice smiled softly, then let them wait. She looked at all three of them. When I found you, she continued, I had nothing, no power, no protection, only courage, and courage was enough. Her words settled deeply in them. Weeks passed. No attacks came. No threats followed. The noise died completely. One afternoon, Mama Eunice visited her old street alone. The food stall was gone. A phone shop stood in its place. She stood quietly, remembering the rain, the crying, the first night. A young girl approached her. "Auntie," the girl said shyly, "are you Mama Eunice?" She nodded. "My mother says you saved people," the girl said. Mama Eunice smiled, "I only cooked food." The girl smiled back and ran off. Mama Eunice walked away slowly, her heart full. That night at dinner, Said spoke softly. "Mama, what do you want now?" Mama Eunice thought for a long moment. "I want peace," she said, "and I want to live long enough to see you help others the way you were helped." Tun nodded, "That will be our legacy." But far away in a quiet room, someone watched the news one last time. The screen showed Mama Eunice serving food, smiling gently. The screen went dark. A voice spoke softly. "She turned them into something dangerous." Another voice replied, "No, she turned them into something unstoppable." And with that, the last shadow quietly withdrew. Unnoticed. Defeated. Because some stories do not end with punishment. They end with growth. And Mama Eunice's story was not about revenge. It was about what happens when kindness survives everything meant to kill it. Time did what it always does. It softened the sharp edges. Years passed not in fear but in purpose. Mama Eunice grew older but stronger in spirit. Her steps slowed, her hands wrinkled, yet her eyes remained bright. Every morning she still insisted on visiting the community kitchen, even when doctors advised rest. "This work is my rest," she always replied. The kitchen became more than a place to eat. It became a shelter for stories. People came with hunger in their stomachs and heaviness in their hearts. Mama Eunice listened to all of them. She never asked where they came from or what they had lost. She only asked, "Have you eaten?" The triplets' influence grew, but quietly. They invested in schools, shelters, and small businesses. They refused flashy ceremonies. They avoided loud praise. When asked why, Tund always answered the same way. "Our mother taught us that impact does not need noise." Mama Eunice Holloway became known not as the adopted mother of powerful heirs, but as a symbol of something rare: selfless care without expectation. One afternoon, as the sun dipped low, Mama Eunice sat in the garden with Said. Birds fluttered between trees. The world felt gentle. "Said," Mama Eunice said softly, "do you ever think about that night?" Said nodded, "Often." Mama Eunice smiled. "I used to wonder why God chose me, a tired woman with nothing." Said held her hand. "You had the most important thing." "What?" Mama Eunice asked. "A heart that did not ask questions before loving." Mama Eunice closed her eyes, letting the words sink in. That evening, the triplets gathered around her. Dame Lola brought out an old, worn pot, the same type Mama Eunice once used at her stall. It had been cleaned carefully, preserved like treasure. "We found it in storage," he said. Mama Eunice gasped, "My pot." Tun smiled, "We kept it all these years." Said added, "It reminds us where everything started." Mama Eunice touched it gently. Memories flooding back, hunger, hope, long days, quiet prayers. That night she slept peacefully. In the early hours of the morning, she did not wake up. She passed quietly without pain, with a soft smile on her face. The house filled with grief, but also gratitude. At her funeral, there were no grand speeches, no long titles, just people, hundreds of them: students, widows, former street children, business leaders, ordinary neighbors. They came with stories. "She fed me when I had nothing. She paid my exam fee. She listened when no one else did. She saved my life." The triplets stood together, holding hands. Tun spoke briefly. "Our mother was not rich when she found us," he said, "but she made us rich in ways money cannot." Dame Lola added, "Everything we build from today onward will carry her spirit." Said whispered, "Because love is the greatest inheritance." They honored Mama Eunice by expanding the community kitchen into a foundation. It provided food, education support, and shelter for homeless youth, especially orphans. At the entrance stood a simple inscription: "Kindness saved 3 lives here. May it save many more." Years later, a young woman stood under that sign, holding the hands of 3 frightened children as rain poured down. Inside the kitchen, warm food waited. The circle continued. Mama Eunice's story did not end with her passing. It lived on, in every meal served without judgment, every child protected without question, every life changed by simple compassion. Because sometimes the greatest legacy does not come from power or wealth. It comes from a tired woman who chose not to walk away.
Thank you for watching Black Race Tales. Remember, every story carries a lesson, and every lesson carries our legacy. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button, and share this story with someone who needs its message today. See you in the next tale.